Hi, welcome to the Dr. Be Good podcast on the 29th of October, 2019. I'm Scott Townsend. I'll be the host today. And I'm here with Natasha Forge.
Yes, I am the guidance counselor for the middle school. For the high school. Oh, my gosh.
Well, you know.
I worked at the middle school yesterday.
We wear many hats.
Yes.
So our topic today is kind of sober. It's a little more of a serious topic than some of the ones in the past. Today is about the second leading cause of death in America. And from the ages of 10 through 14, the number one cause is accidents, which would be involuntary, right, car accidents or work accidents. But the number two cause is suicide. It kind of caught me by surprise that was such a high number. So not just for youngsters, right? As we get older through middle age, above age 30 into the 50s, it becomes the fourth leading cause of death, and that's because heart disease and cancer takes over. Twice as many suicides in the United States as homicides. So, a couple of the numbers. Natasha, you've been in school counseling for several years. What are some changes you've seen in how schools address mental health and suicide issues?
I do believe that now we take it a little bit more serious. We're noticing that many students are becoming more aware through maybe social media, the TV, just different ways of killing themselves. I do know that there was a video at one point it was on the children's cartoons on YouTube, and so then they had a little excerpt of someone telling the kids to set the house on fire, to go and use a knife, go get the knife, and then stab a person, and then to take their own life. And so they're seeing those types of situations. And in the process, it's becoming more nationally known. So now the students are aware of this information. And so now that they're aware, some of them actually begin to have those ideations.
Wow. So first, some terms. And there's a couple terms I'm trying to learn myself. So, for example, suicide is defined as a self-inflicted injury that causes death. Suicide attempt is a non-fatal attempt. Directed at somebody to cause their own death, but they didn't end in death. And then suicide ideation is what you're referring to. I guess when I was younger, we might have taught that thoughts of suicide or
Correct.
Suicidal thoughts, but now it's ideation, and that includes planning, thinking about it. And so one of the things that we were sharing earlier is I really want to not use the word a successful attempt when someone commits suicide, because we tend to use the word success with a positive outcome. And so I'm looking for a good word for that other than just the word suicide. And so hopefully I can use that correctly as we go through our podcast. So the social media, so much of an influence on kids, right? And
Yes.
different grade levels, more of an influence than others. Are you seeing a bigger rise in middle school than high school in terms of from a school perspective and students coming forward and doing threat analysis?
Yes. So for Legacy per se, and I'm sure other schools in the area. However, we do have a higher rate of middle school students who are attempting or who have more ideations that they'll come forward and communicate with someone. What we're noticing is that at the middle school stage, they are trying to find out who they are, and they're learning more about the things that are happening in the home, such as, parents arguing all the time. When they're younger, they don't notice it, just because the parents may put them in a room and they play, things of that nature. But now they are aware. They listen. They understand the conversations that their parents are having. At the schools, we have direct bullying and indirect bullying. And I'm not saying necessarily at Legacy, however, I'm just saying in general. But so some of the students are, they indicate that they have been bullied, or some don't even indicate that they've been bullied, but then yet and still, they still have those ideations of, well, if I wasn't here, I can cause revenge on this person, or if I wasn't here, I can make my family, I'll take the burden off of my family. So those are some of the thoughts that some of the students who we've had suicide assessments on have actually said, because they either want to hurt someone from it, because they were being hurt, or they want to free someone and relieve them of them being a burden.
And that's the way they find would be the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that does a lot. Like I said, it does happen more so in middle school right now at the ones that I've worked with at Legacy. But like I said, they're trying to find themselves. They're trying to determine where they are and where they lie in society. And it's hard. It's really hard. And then you also have to think about, now before middle school, they really weren't thinking about the opposite sex. And now they're thinking about the opposite sex. And then like when we talk about cyberbullying, like some of that indirect bullying, we have fictitious Instagram pages where people have made Instagram pages of other students and then send images or things of that nature, to their friends in the school or in the community. We have it to where they will post things on Snapchat, and since those are only up for like 24 hours, then of course they're gone. However, it does make students feel a certain type of way. So that's why it's very good for parents to be involved and understand what is going on their students' social media. In some cases, I have noticed that some students are not supposed to have social media. Their parents have basically said you can't have it, but yet and still they hide it. And those students have a harder time because they're unable to communicate with anyone in thinking that they're going to be in trouble once their parents find out. So those are the ones
they don't want to come forth and be honest, because then they'll get in trouble for being on Instagram or something.
So then it's kind of like a volcano effect. So then they take in so much, and then they just feel like they can't handle the situation anymore.
Yep, no way out. So I think from a school, there's certain things that we have to do as a school, right? There's some laws and some policies. And there's some things probably that we choose to do because we're a compassionate entity and we want the best for kids and best for families. And there's some things I'm sure that we're limited, that we're not allowed to do because of whatever the law might entail. So when a threat becomes aware, right? So we're like, hey, this student may be having suicidal ideations. What's your next step? What do we do as a school?
So normally the teachers will inform the counselor or the director. Sometimes the nurse will have to get involved, just depending on the situation. So, for example, if a student, let's say for example, a student was cutting, and I'll just give one for like a complete suicide. If a student was cutting, then the first thing the student would do is go to the nurse for the nurse to, look at the scars and send information to the counselor and other to the director. We would still do a suicide assessment for that student just to ensure that they have no suicide ideations, because we understand that sometimes cutting is associated with suicide, but sometimes it's just strictly depression. But if it was like a teacher were to say, well, I was talking with little Johnny, and little Johnny, told me that he wanted to hang himself, then at that point, we will go into our full process of making sure that the student first is safe. We would not allow the student to be anywhere by him or herself at any time. We would ask a series of questions that would kind of help us to determine if the student is low, moderate, or high. And then at that point, we will, of course, contact the parents to let them know the situation at hand, and then we will also call the ADAPT team. And so the ADAPT team is like a mobile crisis center that will come out and basically also do a threat assessment with the student, just to kind of make sure that they are, and from there they communicate with the parent as well, and they also seek additional assistance for the students if they are moderate and high.
Yeah. So often we talk about things and we use it hypothetically, right? Like, if this happens, then we'll do that. Or if this other thing happens, then we'll step. But this is, I don't want to say daily, but this is a fairly frequent event, right? You go through suicide threat analyses and to ensure the safety of our students fairly often.
Yes, we do. And for some students, it's because they're angry. They'll make a comment in class, oh, I wish I was dead. And we do take each one of those serious. And even if the student, was just playing or was just saying it out of frustration, we do take it serious at each time. And then when they come back from like being evaluated, then we do have what we call the oh my gosh, I can't even think of what it's called. It's basically it's a contract. So it's like when they come back, we create a contract with them. Then we make sure that, like they can't wear a belt or they can't wear shoestrings and things of that
Right.
nature, just so that we can make them safe. They're paired with a buddy to go to the restroom or things of that nature. So we just try to ensure that the student is safe at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's reflect it on a national perspective with some numbers. So I wrote things down. Excuse me for referencing this, but I don't want to have the wrong number. So between 2001 and 2017, and 2001, that's about when our high school seniors were born, right? 2001, 2002.
Mm-hmm.
So at about their time frame of their life, the past, that 16, 17-year time period, the total suicide rate in America has increased 31%. And the suicide rate among males is 4 times higher than among females, although the females are more likely to attempt suicide. And in 2017 alone, 10.6 million adults aged 18 or older reported having serious thoughts about trying to kill themselves. Now, I looked that up, and that's more than the population of Greece or Portugal or Sweden every year, 2017. And 1.4 million adults in 2017 made a non-fatal suicide attempt. So,
well, I just want to stop you here too, because those numbers are very high.
Yeah.
However, these are just reported cases. There are so many different cases that have not been reported because people, of course, they don't want to tell anyone. They are ashamed, and they're not able to get that help that they need at that time as well. So those numbers are actually higher.
Yeah, I bet so. So risk factors. The main risk factors, according to the Center for Disease Control, is a prior suicide attempt, depression and other mental health disorders, substance abuse, a family history of mental health or substance abuse, family history of suicide, family violence, having guns or other firearms in the home, being in prison or jail, being exposed to other people's suicidal behavior, and simply being between the ages of 15 and 24 or over the age of 60. So that's right in our population of, the 15 to 24. So not only, in terms of schools, we don't end our compassion at 18 when they walk across the stage. We really want someone to be healthy mentally and physically and educationally for the rest of their life.
Correct.
So that extends hopefully our positive influence extends beyond graduation.
Well, I will just kind of like touch on a couple of these, like such as having the guns or other firearms in the home. It has been kind of noted that when students, or people, period, when they know that those firearms are in the home and they know how to use them, or sometimes don't know how to use them, then they will, that's basically an immediate a situation in which they, like sometimes students take, like the girls will take pills and things like that so that they can go to sleep, whereas many guys, they will use firearms, and because it's like an immediate decision that they want, and they don't want to hold on to it. Depression, just like I was talking to about earlier about the cutting, some of the students, they use, because they are depressed, so they're very frustrated and they don't know how to communicate with anyone, then they begin to hurt themselves. And sometimes it does get to the extent to where they want to hurt themselves to the point of death. And that's something that as the school, we have to start doing a better job of making sure that we're building rapport with our students, because in many cases, students cry out for help. They do things that are outside of their character. One of the students that I spoke with when I was doing a suicide assessment basically stated that anytime she felt a need to want to hurt herself, she would be very disrespectful to her teachers. But that's not anything that her teachers have really noticed. So, I asked her, I was like, well, what are some of the things that you would do so that your teachers can notice? Like, what are some of the things that you would say? Mm-hmm. And, it was just more of just being very disrespectful, just talking out of turn and things of that nature. Another student asked the same thing, because the main thing for us is that we want to focus on how we can help the student. So our teachers have to be vigilant to making sure that they're monitoring the classes and that they are noticing what the students are doing. Yeah. And so another student said that, normally she would do her work, and as she does her work, she would, if she decided to, if she was shaking her leg a lot, then that was an indication that something was going on with her, that she would probably need to go and see the counselor. At this point, there are some students who feel comfortable talking to some of the adults at the school, but there are many of our students who don't have that one person that they can go and talk to yet. And that's something that we're going to have to do a better job of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd imagine even, it's stressful for a student to change schools.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a traumatic event sometimes in a youth, but I can see that being fairly early on, finding a confidant, finding somebody that whether it's an adult or another student.
Mm-hmm.
But you've had issues, haven't you, where the students have been the ones that have talked to other students, but they've never reported to an adult?
Correct.
Yeah, so that might be something that we need to address. How would you describe that particular situation?
We have some students who they consider themselves helping their friends.
Yeah.
So in some cases, they know that their friends are suicidal or they're depressed and things of that nature, and they check in on them, and we commend them for that. However, when asked, have you ever told an adult? They had not told any adult what is going on, yet and still the students were really harming themselves at the school. Then we also, we asked about, have you informed your parents? And they too had not informed their parents. So what they have done is they have created a nurturing environment for their friends to try to help them deal with this situation. However, they have not even, the person with self-harm as well as their friends have not reached out to any adults.
Right.
And that is a concern, because it lets us know almost what we were seeing before with bullying. You have witnesses. You have the bully, the bullied, and the witness. And no one shares that information, and it continues to go on and on until a situation may arise in which a student may attempt to commit suicide. So that's why it's very important for parents to communicate with their children at home, and not to have it to where there's a reprimand. So when students, if a student were to go, well, a child, I'll say at this point, will go home and talk to their parent and say, I'm having a rough day, I just wish I wasn't here. Sometimes as parents, we begin to focus on ourselves. Oh, you just want to leave me. Oh, this is about me. No, it's not about you. It's about how that student is feeling at that time. And they do need some empathy so that they can talk with you about the situation, so that as a parent, you can get help. And then that's the same thing that we'll be doing at the school as a teacher or staff member, as any educator. Then any student that comes to talk with us, we're going to show that empathy for that student, so that the main thing is that we can begin to help with those coping skills.
Yeah, I was reading this National Institute of Health article, and it was saying that when someone is planning their suicide, or they're really thinking about it more than just abstractly, but they're starting to get down to the details of the planning, that there's a significant lack of ability to make decisions, and so they're tracking this. The decision-making process is dropping in terms of being effective when the suicide attempts go up. And I guess that would make sense, right? Because it's not a logical decision that people would normally make, especially when we're young. And when we talk about high school and middle school students, they're not exactly known for making the world's best decisions day in, day out anyways. So it's that difficult time frame. But you've got, we have, I guess, a suicide threat assessment with specific questions to lead them through. And so what are some of the things that you would ask to find out, the validity of the threat, or how severe, how serious, how quickly you'd need to react? What are some of the type of, questions or I'm trying to think of, like, from a parent standpoint of view, at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, what would they ask their students to be able to kind of get a rough idea?
Right. They can ask them from a parent perspective, how was your day? And not just have the student give like a good or anything like that. Be specific, like you can ask, who did you have lunch with today? To try to see first if they're being isolated or anything of that nature. They can also ask questions like, who are your friends, and, what did you guys discuss and talk about today? And so, like, especially if it's a student who is trying to protect someone else, they may share with their parents at that time. If it's a student who may be thinking of committing suicide, then they may want to open up. But it's an open-ended questions that you want to start asking your students, so that they can give you explicit answers, meaning that they are detailed in what you're asking them. So a lot of it is making, like, talking about making connections. Like, who's your favorite teacher? Have you communicated with that teacher? Things of that nature. That's what I would say more so at home. When we are at work and we have a suicide assessment, we do ask questions that are kind of like more specific. And I know sometimes it states, if you ask a student about suicide, then all of a sudden then they want to begin to commit suicide, and that is not the case.
Sure.
What happens is we do ask because we want them to be honest and say either yes or no, and then we will go from there by asking, do you have a concrete plan? Is it detailed? And sometimes students do have a detailed plan, and they know from front to back what they're planning on doing. And whereas other students may just say, well, I'm just going to, jump off the bridge, but it's not to the degree of I'm going to drive my car to the edge of the bridge. I'm going to, I'm going to wear this particular outfit. And so it just really all depends. And so that's how we determine if it's like moderate or high risk. But we do have to ask those serious questions. We do have to ask, do they have a support system at home? Some students will say no. They feel like they're isolated at home and they don't have anyone to support them. We ask other questions relating to their school life. What is going on at school that may cause them to feel that way? And then we ask other questions such as, what can be done to make it better? So that we can begin to see the brighter side, so that they can not focus on the negative so much, and then focus on how they can get themselves either out of that depression or out of that way of thinking of like, what are your bright spots? What are those things that really are helping you make it through your day, because you have not attempted as of right now. So like, what are those things? And so those are some of the types of questions that we ask.
Yeah. The National Institute of Health article was mentioning how many students or how many people attempt suicide and then live through it and then regret doing it.
Correct.
And so I think that, that I would imagine that that's something where, stopping it before it happens, of course, will be the best way. So for our parents, I would imagine some of the parents were in denial, right? I mean, I think of my own kids, and I think of, well, maybe that's just them talking, but I don't know how serious they are. That would be a comforting reaction from a parent to protect themselves from not having such a nurturing environment for their kid. But the reality is, if that's what the kid is feeling or thinking, that's the kid's reality.
Yes, and we do see that a lot. The parents are in denial because no one wants to be that parent to where they, their child wants to commit suicide, because they do, everyone has their own household. And so, I was brought up always saying that everybody's household is dysfunctional, so you can't look at the next person's household in any type of way other than, you have to accept what is in people's household. So therefore, what happens is the student will say, oh, I want to hurt myself, I want to commit suicide. And then the parents will say, oh, no, they're just playing. They have the perfect life and things of that nature. However, they may not understand what else the student is going through, especially like in the middle school and high school. Now they're in that age of where they want to focus on the opposite sex. And so, so now they're in those relationships. And depending on the household and how relationships have been formed in the household, they may not understand that, okay, I am 12 years old. I don't need to have a boyfriend. But they do feel like sometimes they do. And then they call themselves boyfriend and girlfriend. They're going out, and then he or she breaks up with them, and then they start talking to someone else, and they don't know how to handle that. But yet and still, those conversations are not being taken place at home, because at home, you don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You're too young. So you can't share that information. So when you go and you say, I want to commit suicide, and it's because of this relationship that you formed, who can you talk to other than your friends? And so it makes it that much more difficult. Yeah.
So the child's layered up lies, or I guess hidden things, and now they don't know a way out of it.
Correct.
Yeah. So how do we help the kids, right? So one of the articles that we were reading was talking about anxiety levels and exercise. And, I think back to, my own mother's advice, always good, everything she said was good. But one of the things was typically go for a run or sleep it off. You'll feel better in the morning. Or go exercise and you'll work off that aggression. Or if you've got test anxiety, you just exercise a little bit and it'll clear up. And we're finding out that research shows that there's a lot of truth to that. That's not the only issue, or every marathon runner would be perfect mental health, right?
Right.
So how do we find that connection between the adult? You said the teacher can connect with the kids, the parent can connect to the kids, but how do we identify the students that don't have any connections? You know, do we have any, like on, you know, we have Monday rotations. You know, do we have any things coming up with mental health for the students to say, you know, here's how you reach out? Or I guess they can always reach out to you, and you've got a great relationship with the students. But do you have any suggestions for, you know, the parent or the student who may not have that confidant?
Well, I will say our rotations right now are based on instruction or college and career, or we're focusing on our students passing their end of course exams. So I will say that majority of those are. However, as we move forward, Dr. Good has approved for a company to come out, and what's actually the students from UTD, they're going to come out and they're going to really focus on coping skills from relationships, mental health aspects with our ninth graders. And so that's something that we are going to put in place. And I understand that that's only touching the surface a little bit. However, the mainstream is going to be the teachers in the classroom. Like they're going to have to build a rapport with every student in their class so that they can begin to see the differences in how a student responds and reacts on a daily basis. And that is going to be the number one thing that we can offer at this time.
Yeah. And, you know, daily we have restorative circles, right, where
Yes.
the students will be in a circle with the teacher and we'll discuss, you know, topics of importance and what's going on in our life and help build those connections and bridge the gap from the student to the outside of school to the student inside the school and work on the whole child. Maybe that's a daily event that can teachers can
and they do that every morning. You're right.
Okay, so the conversations without repercussions, you said that's a big thing for the parent. Are there any other things that you would suggest to parents in terms of they're trying to get this conversation going, or they're not sure how to address it with the child, but maybe they're watching the podcast and they think, I need to have that conversation tonight. How might they start it?
I would say just in a comfortable situation, like just a comfortable conversation, casual conversation, just talking with the students, you know, about how they're feeling about their life. Are they enjoying it? Or are they, you know, like what are their goals in life? Just to kind of see if they have anything that they are hoping for. Yeah. And that's another thing that kind of helps students and people to come out of depression, the hope. And, you know, from there, like help them with avenues of trying to get to where they want to go, their desires and things of that nature. But it doesn't necessarily always have to be, do you want to commit suicide? You know, that's not necessarily how you want to start that conversation, but it does start with, hey, what are some of the things that you like that's going on? Or what is something that happened today that you would have changed? Things like that you just want to have just a casual, direct conversation with your child and go from there.
Excellent. So hopefully that's helped people. I mean, I think the main goal of this is if there's one family, if there's one parent or child that has that conversations that can keep from the, you know, ideation into a suicidal attempt, you know, all of our efforts worthwhile.
Correct.
And you've had 3 threat assessments this week?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And today's Tuesday.
Yes, so they were yesterday.
That would be a number we'd like to have much less.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Are you ready to go exercise and get the endorphins and the brain chemistry going?
I'm ready.
All right. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you do have any questions or want to have any follow-up conversations, by all means, you can reach out to us. And the Center for Disease Control and National Institute for Health are fantastic resources. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything. Have a great evening. And Natasha, thanks for coming out.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook. where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.